So we will need mat space. I highly recommend that you, as well as your mat, that you might have a folded blanket on top of your mat, because we'll start with some nice somatic work where we really need to be toasty warm and where there is no need for any restriction of comfort. In fact, I would argue that there's no need for any restriction of comfort at any point in a yoga practice, but there's also moments of deliberate challenge. But in this moment, it's about creating a little nest. We will later on need restorative props, which can be a bolster if you have them, have one, blocks and cushions, or it may be just cushions and books and things, whatever you have around you that will facilitate you. And you're welcome to wrap up in a blankie, to bring an eye pillow. Probably not the best thing to use an eye pillow at the beginning because you might get sleepy a bit too soon. But sometimes if you've got a bit too much brightness, you might enjoy an eye pillow or a sock or a scarf over your eyes. And as you lie down, just notice what position your body would like to be in. It might want to be fully supine, meaning fully lying down with legs out flat. Chilly here, I'm just getting an extra heater on. Or it might be that it wants to be with knees bent. Or you might even want to be on your side or your belly. And just reminding yourself of those choices in this moment. My intention is for you to remember that you have choices in every moment. You're welcome to keep your eyes open for a while and check out the room you're in. Or you're welcome to have them closed. And that goes again at all times. And then you're welcome to connect with your breathing. If that's a pleasant place to inhabit. And just taking a moment to celebrate your human spirit. The bit of you that keeps on trucking in the midst of difficulties. Not only is there a bit of you that keeps on trucking, but there are also bits of you that are able to experience joy and pleasure. Our nervous system is very intelligent. And it knows when we need a break from discomfort, whether that's physical, mental, or emotional. If you've ever been gathered at the bedside of someone beloved who is unwell and it's an intense time, or if you've ever been bereaved of someone close to you, you'll know that as you spend all those hours with the people who are in this with you, that we can move from tears to laughter in a moment. And that's the nervous system looking after you, allowing you not to have to stay in the struggle constantly, but giving us little breaks. Just like as we watch difficulties over the decades now and decades ago, there's always been some thing in the world that's discombobulating and upsetting and devastating. And we've always had this difficulty of, is it okay for me to feel joy at this time as well? And just know that your nervous system is looking after you when it shows you bits of joy or when you feel bits of joy. So with all our diagnoses and all our fears and worries, taking a moment to honor the diversity of experience that our nervous system, our body, our whole being brings us. And over the course of this class, your mood may change multiple times. Your thoughts may change, your energy will change. Let them come and let them go. And if your breath is not already lengthened or deepened, please begin to lengthen your exhale and deepen your inhale. And notice anywhere in your body that feels pleasure right now. Or that just feels kind of nice, that feels just right or at ease. And then take your lovely arms wide on the floor at about a 90-degree angle from your body. And we'll begin with a little wash rag twist. So with the feet, the knees bent and the feet about hips width apart, taking the knees softly one way, the head to the other. Excuse me, and then the knees going back the other way, the head opposite. The feet stay hips width apart more or less so that the legs are going to be moving in a scissors motion. They're not going to be keeping the knees together. But if that hurts you anywhere, like your lower back or your hip, then do stack the feet and knees. But if you keep the feet in the scissors motion, it's a little safer in terms of osteoporosis, that there won't be quite so much twist in the spine. And if you're worried about safety, just go less far, but it's not really a dramatic movement that's contraindicated for anything unless there's pain. If you want to add in a little more movement in the body, you could turn the right palm up and the left palm down as you look to the right. And you could turn the left palm down, right palm down, left palm up as you look to the left. So if you're involving the arms as well as the head, you're always looking to the upturned palm and the other palm is down. If that's too much for your brain to hold, then just do the legs and the head. Last layer is that as you move the palms, it's not just from the wrist, it's all the way from the shoulders and shoulder blades. So try to make sure that the movement is coming from the whole arm, and suddenly nothing is not moving, but in a way that is so gentle. Maybe you can take the whole inhale to get to one side and the whole exhale to get to the other. And look for what's pleasant, maybe even pleasurable. And that what's pleasant might change. And just spending another half a minute here. Beginning to think about winding this down. That may look like slowing the movement, making it smaller, or it may be that you immediately stop, or maybe it turns into something else. But eventually bringing yourself to an easy stillness and letting your legs drift out long. And just soaking in the sensations that you're feeling. Notice what you're noticing. And then when you're ready, bend your two knees. So your feet are hips width apart again, and your hands can rest maybe closer to your side or on your body if you prefer. And begin arch and flatten. So arch and flatten is exhaling, the lower back touches the floor, your tail is kind of curling up a little. Inhaling, the tail is touching the floor and the lower back is separating from the floor. All times the pelvis stays on the floor and you're inhaling to arch the pelvis away from your face, and you're exhaling to flatten the lower back to the floor. So in yoga, we're used to doing this movement and just thinking about where the pelvis is going, and the spine, and the bones. We really tend to think, I think, a little more about the bony alignment in yoga. But here, would you take a leaf out of the somatics book and notice what muscles are gliding short, i.e., you will feel like a contraction as you move in one direction, and what muscles are gliding long, what you might think of as a stretch or a relaxation as you do each movement. And we're primarily looking at the muscles of the abdomen and the muscles of the lower back. See what you notice in terms of, oh yeah, I can feel those muscles contracting and those lengthening, and oh yeah, I can feel those contracting and those lengthening in the other position. And what you're probably feeling is that when you flatten the back against the floor, the muscles of the belly are contracting. They're drawing the the pubic bone closer to the rib cage. And as you arch, the muscles of your lower back are contracting short, drawing the back of the rib cage down towards the pelvis and the pelvis up towards the rib cage. And each of those sets of muscles is gliding long when the other is gliding short. Just notice the counter movement of these two opposing groups of muscles. And how smooth can you make this movement? And when you're ready, come back to center. Notice what you notice. Sense of awareness, sense of sensation. And then just walk your feet slightly closer together. And another somatic practice. We're going to inhale to let the knees roll out away from each other. And exhale, let them roll back towards each other. Inhale, let them roll out. And exhale, let them roll in. You might find that in part of the movement, there is a bit of a judder, a stutter, that there's a lack of smoothness to the movement. See if you can iron out that juddery bit and make the whole movement really smooth. You might prefer to have the feet together or slightly apart. You'd be surprised at how much muscular effort it takes and how soon you may tire. But really what we're doing here is we're trying to rebuild neurological connections to muscles that we may have become detached from. And in Thomas Hanna Somatics, he talks about sensory motor amnesia, which is where the muscles and the sensory motor cortex have forgotten how to connect with each other. And that can lead to chronic tension in the muscles or even chronic weakness. But normally what somatics is working on is trying to remind muscles that are hyper tense that they can relax. But it also gives us a really strong sense of connection from brain to body, especially as we go slow and try and iron out the stutters. It's another couple. Maybe breathing in to open and exhaling to close. Notice the muscles that are working. And after your next one, let your legs rest out long again, just noticing what you notice. We're going to do one more somatic practice, and this is quite a lot more muscularly demanding than what we've done so far. And it can be done with the left knee bent and the right leg straight. And what I'd like you to engender or to try to bring about is that your pelvis is parallel to the ceiling. So the front of your pelvis is parallel to the ceiling rather than the pubic bone being higher than the navel. So you're not lower back pressed into the floor. There's a gentle gap, not an arch, but a natural gap between the lower back and the floor. Don't let that gap change. And we're going to connect to our psoas muscle, which is the muscle that runs down the length of our lumbar spine. And in this case, it'll be the right psoas. It goes from the base of the rib cage down the length of all the lumbar vertebrae through the pelvis and attaches to the inside of the thigh bone. And that's the muscle that is involved in walking and bending your knees and climbing stairs, all of our locomotion. What I'd like you to do is imagine that muscle shortening so that it's like your thigh bone is being pulled up along, slid up along the floor towards your hip socket or towards your right ribs. And then imagine that muscle lengthening so that the right leg slides long out the floor again. As you exhale, think of sliding the thigh bone up towards your hip and then let the leg rise up to no higher than parallel with the other thigh. And then use the control of the muscles of the abdomen to lower that leg slowly down and let the leg glide long and relax. So with the exhale, the pelvis is staying on the floor and the leg is being drawn up towards your pelvis and then up towards the ceiling. Now there are other muscles recruited here, but I'd love you to imagine that it's just this fabulous muscle that goes along the side of your lumbar spine. Some of you may have heard me say before that this is in a cow, that's the fillet steak, is their psoas muscle. So you could maybe picture your psoas muscle as this perfect tubular or circular, cylindrical, long, lean muscle, tender and strong. And just do that a few more times, noticing the intensity of muscular effort and how smooth you can make the movement. Brain to body connection. You don't have to go high, don't have to go as high as the other thigh, just don't go any higher. It could be halfway up to that level. Just one more time. You'll notice some other muscles involved, maybe the pelvic floor. And then rest the two legs out long the next time your right leg comes down and just notice the difference between each side. Sense of connection or sensation, whatever you notice. And then bend your right knee and picture your left psoas. And just once, just imagine you're sliding the left thigh bone up the mat by shortening the muscle that connects your left thigh bone to the base of your ribs all along the length of your lumbar spine, your lower back vertebrae. Inhale, let that leg rest out. And exhale, this time draw the thigh up towards the hip before elevating the leg. Feel that work in the deep core, right behind all your organs, as well as the rectus abdominis, your six pack. Women don't tend to have a visible six pack because we tend to have more soft flesh in front of it, but it is there and you can probably feel it working quite hard. Very vertical fibers from the pubic bone to the sternum, but also checking in with your fillet steak. And the little relaxation in between. And you'll probably notice, as I said, the pelvic floor working. Doesn't have to go high. It might be less high on one side than the other. Just two more. Relaxing the jaw and enjoying the breath. Ujjayi breath can be nice on the exertion of lifting that leg. Bit late for me to say that now because we're going to rest. Two legs out long again, and notice the sensations and the connection that you have to basically the whole body from the ribs down. We've really said a big hello to there. And then when you're ready, offer your body a yummy pandiculation on the floor, a yawn stretch. And you've just woken up from the most delicious sleep. Imagine you've got a whole big double bed and take up the whole space of the double bed. Try and touch all the corners of the double bed, all the edges. Maybe that involves you rolling over to your side to reach. Maybe it involves rolling to your belly, whatever you feel like. Just a little prolonged improvisation on your floor there in the privacy of your own home. No one's watching. Moving your body as it wants to move until you eventually find your way, when you're satisfied with that, to lying with your knees bent again. So I promised a little challenge for the vestibular system, and I want to keep it really gentle this evening. So we're going to do a floor-based vestibular system challenge. So the vestibular system is the part of the nervous system that's in the inner ear. It's not part of your brain, but it's very close to your brain. And it's these little semicircular canals that you'll remember from school, where there's fluid in those canals. And when the fluid shifts, it gives you a sense of where you are in space. And it's incredibly delicate and can get discombobulated by vertigo, by menopause, by lots of other just little bits and bobs that can make things go a bit skew-whiff. And in fact, it's pretty extraordinary if it's not a bit skew-whiff because it is so very finely tuned. So this could make you feel a bit icky. So your vestibular system is challenged when you are car sick. And that's because your eyes and your inner ears, your vestibular system and your eyes are having different signals. The eyes are still, you're reading in a car, so your eyes think you're not moving, but the body can feel the change of the position as the car bumps along the road. So your vestibular system knows you are moving. And these mixed signals from the eyes to the vestibular system to the brain is very discombobulating for the nervous system, and it reacts by feeling dizzy and nauseous, or just dizzy or just nauseous. So nausea is a very common symptom of vestibular system dysregulation or car sickness or overdoing some stressor to your nervous system. So this one may make you feel sick when you take it to the max. So if it does, then you've stressed your system a bit too far and you want to just come back a tiny bit from that step you've taken so that you're in the place just before the nausea, because we are trying to create a little challenge. So the arms are going to go up to the ceiling and the legs are going to come off the floor into a, what's this, tabletop position. If you find the tabletop position too difficult to sustain, you can just do it with the feet on the floor. It won't add you any muscular challenge, but it will certainly keep the vestibular challenge going and the brain challenge going. So you decide where the feet are, and you can choose to change the foot position halfway through. That's not a bother. So the first thing we're going to do is bring the right knee and foot out to the right and the left arm out to the left. And back to center. Left knee and foot out to the left, right arm out to the right. And back to center. And continue doing that. Right knee, left arm, and back to center. Left knee, right arm, and back to center. Next step, if it's okay for you, so this is already a great bit of brain training, just doing these diagonal movements. But the next step is to turn your head and watch the hand that's going out to the side. And bring the head and hand back to center. Turn the head to watch the other hand. And bring the head and hand back to center, and the leg is still working. If you're getting very tired in your core or back, continue this exercise with your feet on the floor because the major vestibular challenge is coming now. So the last bit to add is that your eyes stay on the ceiling and your head follows the hand. So as the knee goes out to the left, the arm to the right, the head is looking towards the hand, but the eyes are fixed on the ceiling. So this is where the challenge is, because the head, the vestibular system rather, and the eyes are not in agreement. Do a few more. You might be nauseous already. Some of you might be totally fine already, or still. I'm not asking you to try and get to nausea. If this is horrible for you, you'll probably get nauseous pretty quick. Whether you're nauseous or not, it's a great challenge for your brain. Do 2 more each side if you can. If your legs are still off the floor, a little tone in the pelvic floor might be a good reminder. And then when you're ready, bring your limbs back to the floor. Take a little rest again with the legs long after all that contraction in the hips. See where you'd like to have your arms. Do you want to be still or move? I should have reminded you, of course, to breathe deeply because oxygenation will help us not feel icky. A lot of people get a bit nauseous after yoga, and sometimes I think it's release of toxins, but I think often it is to do with vestibular challenge as well, or potentially. And then we're going to bend our knees, and we're going to roll over to the right side. And rest your head either on your right elbow or on a low yoga block or on a cushion. And take your left hand onto your left hip. And we're just going to do some hip hikes. So if you imagine that you're able to, or do picture the length of your left waist here, and just hike your left hip up to shorten the waist. So you're lifting the hip joint up towards the rib cage. And then the opposite, hike, or opposite of hike, I don't know, lower the hip down as if you're going to touch your bottom to your heel, and hike the hip up as you exhale and hike it down as you inhale. So the foot staying still, Shobha, the knees are together, the feet are together, and it's really just an isolated movement of the actual pelvis. So your leg doesn't have to go anywhere. The pelvis is moving down towards the bottom of the mat, and the pelvis is moving up towards your armpit. And then we're going to let the pelvis come back to neutral, and we're going to go forward and back with the pelvis. So it's not a rocking forwards and back like this. It's actually a slide of that top knee forward. So the hip in itself just moves forward, and then the hip in itself moves back. And the knee is going to happen to slide up and down the inside of the opposite leg. It's not rolling. It's really trying to isolate this strange movement of the left side of the pelvis back and forth. Notice the sensations in your hips, your pelvic floor. And then we're going to join all four and draw this big circle with the hip. So what you could imagine here is that you've got a pencil sticking vertically up out of your hip, and you're going to try and draw a circle on the ceiling with the pencil. Your hand might help you to have your hand on your hip to feel the movement, or you might just be as happy with your hand resting on the floor. Change direction with the rotation of the hip if you can. And it feels like somewhere between a kind of sexy dance and the long stick of a locomotive train. You know, when you used to have those old locomotives where there'd be the big wheel and another big wheel and a stick between it that's moving through the circle of the wheel. It's almost like your femur is that bit of the locomotive device. Take a little rest. That was probably both quite muscular and quite pleasurable. Take the left knee in front of your tummy and give the left thigh, hip, and buttock a bit of a massage, squeeze, whatever it fancies. A wobble, maybe, a pat. Something that feels nice. Maybe get down to that knee. Knees need a lot of TLC. We're not really doing anything for the knees this evening, but always nice to give them a bit of a squidge, get the blood flowing. We're going to do something much less pleasant. We're going to extend the left leg and come up onto the right elbow. So the left leg is long and the right knee is bent. And try to lift the right waist up off the floor. So you're not sagging down like this little rising up of the right waist. And then elevate the left leg literally an inch off the floor. So we're avoiding dropping down, and we're trying to create a neutral line between the top of our head and the heel of the left leg. And then draw that leg forward with control without rounding in the back or sagging the head forward. So literally just the hip, just like the leg raises we did when we were lying down. And then bring that leg back behind you without flaring forward. So it might be quite a small movement back. And exhale to bring it forward. Think of the psoas muscle and keep the trunk neutral. My right waist is sagging down again. Try and lift that right waist. Try and draw the left shoulder away from the ear. The leg comes back. Sorry, the right shoulder away from the ear. Leg comes forward. The hand helps you stabilize the trunk. Inhale back. And then we'll bend the two knees, come up onto your right hand if your wrist will allow. If you find you get sore wrists, stay down on your elbow, as this is going to be more taxing in a minute. We're going to inhale here, draw that shoulder down from your ear, and exhale, lift up into a kneeling plank. If you like, you can have your hand on your hip or up to the ceiling. And then if you have it in you, you can extend the bottom leg. Lift the right waist off the floor, draw the two shoulders down from the ears, tuck the chin slightly. And if you want, you can elevate that top leg and draw tiny circles with that top leg for 5, 4, come down to the elbow if it's horrible on the wrist or shoulder. 2, 1, change direction with the tiny circles. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and bring your two knees down over onto all fours. And unless you feel you need to see the video, just flip over to the other side. I'm going to turn around so I can see. And we're going right down to the beginning of all that sequence. So resting down on your left arm, bending up your two knees, that the knees are approximately in line with the hips, but they can be a bit further down, but maybe not further up. And we're just going to do those hip hikes again. So shorten the right waist by drawing the right hip up to the right armpit, and then send the right hip down towards the bottom of the mat. And tucking up and extending down. Exhaling up rather, and inhaling down. And exhaling up. Just feel what muscles are gliding short. What are gliding long, like the bottom waist is getting involved in this. It's shortening and lengthening as the other waist is lengthening and shortening. And then we're going to do the back and forth. So the top knee is going to be affected by the movement, but it's not creating the movement. The right hip is sliding forward, so the top knee is going to slide forward. And then the top hip is sliding back, so the top knee is going to slide up the inside of the thigh. It's very small. There's not that much range of motion here. But try and let it be not a rocking back and forth like this, which is kind of a nice feeling too, but a shift of the thigh bone back and forth, and the hip back and forth. And then we'll go into those circles, trying to articulate this top hip on its own. And again, I find it helpful to think of that locomotion type or locomotive type structure, as if my hip is the wheel and my thigh bone is that bar that goes from wheel to wheel. But I also quite enjoy the kind of vaguely sexy dance kind of vibe that's going on here, and reverse rather the hip motion, and notice what muscles and tissues are involved. And breathe. A lot more tiring than someone watching might imagine. A lot more muscle recruitment. And then let that go, bringing the right knee up and having a little massage of the thigh, hip, or buttock, or the knee, or wherever is called upon. Might be wobbles, strokes, pats, squidges. And then we'll come up onto the left elbow. And probably the more important thing here than what happens with the leg is lifting that left waist up off the floor and trying to create a more neutral line in the spine from the head to the tail, and then the head to the right leg as the right leg extends and lifts slightly. And every now and then you'll probably have to pop that left hip up or that left waist up. Draw the left shoulder down from your ear, and then without moving the trunk at all, can you just bring the leg forward like you're kicking a ball in slow motion, and then reaching back without bowing the pelvis forward. So it's not going to go as far back as you might want to feel like you're doing ballet or something. It's a little more limited. Don't forget to breathe. Looking for the pleasure and noticing the things your body can do. Noticing your mood. Has it changed? Noticing your worries. Have they dissipated? Are they still with you? Do they feel more bearable, less bearable? Just noticing how the thoughts come and go, the feelings come and go, and pleasure is available amongst it all. And then take yourself up to the hardest version, up onto the left hand. You're certainly welcome to go back down to the elbow if you have trouble in your wrist. Shoulder down from the ear, lift onto the knees, lift that left waist, extend the right leg, lift it just an inch or so, and draw tiny circles with that right leg. For 5, bit of tone in the pelvic floor. Try not to lock the standing elbow. Change direction with the circles. Lift of the pelvic floor, shoulders from the ears. 2, 1, and over you go onto all fours. And as you inhale, lift your tail and bring your shoulders back. And we'll stay here through a few breaths rather than going back and forth. And as you're in this little arch, just take a little sway of the pelvis side to side. Just note in the arch that you don't want to be collapsing down in the belly and crunching into the lower back. And he said clenching. So collapsing and crunching are a no-no. But there is a lift of the tail. Try not to overlift your head either. And as you sway your tail, maybe the sway goes up through the spine and the head starts to get involved, and maybe the shoulders, and maybe you find yourself doing a little dance. Some of you might remember the Tales of the Unexpected, the television program from, I don't know when it was, 70s or 80s or 90s. And there was in the credits, there was this silhouette, woman in silhouette dancing, very snaky dance. So you could bring out your inner snaky television dancer. And then come back to neutral and take your right toes halfway up your shin. So this is hard to describe. Some of you will have done it before. The right knee is off the floor. I know my lighting isn't the best. I need to get a proper light. And the toes are halfway up the shin, but on the floor, the left knee up. And take the hands slightly forward and push straight back through your buttocks. If you've osteoporosis, maintain flat spine. If you don't have osteoporosis, you can look down towards your knees and round your spine. This should feel quite strong in the toes that are halfway up and in the glutes, maybe. A nice sort of child's pose kind of stretch. Keep breathing here. Really, with osteoporosis, make sure not to round the upper back in particular. And then changing sides. Should feel kind of delicious. I hope it does. Move away from pain and towards at least interesting, and even better, towards pleasure. Come back to neutral on your all fours. And if you have a slippy mat or you don't have sticky socks, this would be a good time to take them off because we might need a bit of stickiness. Feet about hips width or wider if you think of yourself as having tight hamstrings, which I think of as strong hamstrings, and hands about mat width apart. And we'll just simply come up into face down dog with a lovely neutral spine, and especially with osteoporosis, working really hard to avoid any rounding in the spine. And that might be through bending the knees a little to lift the tail and find neutral. Let the head hang if you can. Roll your shoulders out away from your ears. And just like we did in our Tales of the Unexpected moment, if you feel like a little mooch about here, as Gil Headley says, can we increase our tolerance for pleasure enough to allow our nervous system to move as it was born to move. So if you were to be here thinking, pleasure is what I seek, how might you allow your body to move? Inhale here, and exhale, bring your lovely knees to the floor. And find your way up to a standing kneel, meaning an upright kneeling position. You're welcome to go anywhere in the interim. And taking your hands to your hips, or even to the back of your pelvis, wherever you feel drawn to have your hands. Feel free to pleat a mat or fold a blanket to kneel on. And taking your hands to the back of the pelvis or the hips, just have a sense of slightly tucking your tail. Not so you kind of push things forward, but just so you're not like this. So you're not sticking your bum out in yoga fashion. Just a slight downward tuck of the tail. So you feel a little zip up in the front of the abdomen would be really great. And taking the arms forward, we're going to tilt back from the knees. So it's not a back bend, it is a tilt at the knees, and we'll feel very muscular. And inhale back up. That's it. Exhale, tilting back again. So it's not a sitting motion, it's a tilting. Perfect, folks. Inhale back. If you want to make it harder, why would you want to do that on a Tuesday night? You can do it with arms above the head, and that is a load harder. So your muscles will have to work double time with the arms overhead. If you feel vulnerability in the lower back, or that the quads are feeling like they're going to tear, please stop. And then do one more time if you're feeling solid. Think of the feet on the floor behind you helping you. And come back to vertical. We'll change this to a nice yoga posture. Tuck the toes, holding the lower back or the pelvis or the sacrum. As you inhale, think of Mula Bandha, drawing in and up at the pelvic floor, in and up at the cervix. Breathing the breath up the front of the spine, a little Uddiyana Bandha, and filling the heart with breath. Excuse me. And as you exhale, tilting back the shoulder girdle without collapsing the pelvis forward. Again, Mula Bandha breathing. Breathe in through the front of the spine from the pelvic floor as if the breath is coming in through the vagina, expanding the chest, arcing back in the pelvic, in the shoulder girdle. And if you feel like your heels are near your fingertips, you can bring them back onto the heels, lift through the sternum. At your peril, you can look to the ceiling. I cannot do it. Some of you might be able to. Breathe. Tone the pelvic floor and lower abdomen. Look for the pleasure, and if there's only pain and fear, you shouldn't be here. If there's only pain and fear, maybe come up a step, or maybe you're already done. And when you feel ready, take the hands to the back, take the pelvis forward, come slowly up with as much control as you can. And if your knees will allow you, untuck your toes and sit back. Maybe that's not possible for your knees, and if it isn't, then just sit down instead. Just finding neutral spine, eyes closed, noticing what you notice. And don't forget to breathe. Noticing if there's anything lovely right now. Maybe it's just the knowledge that we'll be doing some restorative soon. And I highly recommend that you have something to kneel on here because we're going to be on one knee. So taking your weight to the left knee, bring your right foot towards the top of your mat and come into a long lunge so that the back thigh is on a diagonal and the front shin is as vertical as you can get it. So we're aiming to be long enough that there is a solid support for that knee. Lovely. Slightly slide forward if you can, just to let that left kneecap get left behind. For some people that works, this little sort of shift forward gets you off the kneecap, but for some it doesn't. So Just see if it feels like you want to adjust that back knee in any way. And if you can't tolerate the knee on the floor at all, tuck the toes and lift the knee off the floor and just do a higher lunge. We're going to push the left knee forward and the right foot is going to pull back, and we'll feel this redoubling of muscular effort in the legs. Lift through the pelvic floor. Have a sense of rising up to the top of your head, and then take the arms up and arch back a little. So we're in crescent lunge, but with ridiculously strong leg action. Breathing, lifting up through the pelvic floor, up and over rather than falling back. Inhale here and exhale your fingertips to the floor. If you've osteoporosis and your fingertips don't get to the floor with a neutral spine, you must put your hands up on blocks or a chair or anything that will stop you rounding in the spine. And we're going to turn the right toes slightly out. So angle the right toes slightly out. That's it. And we're simply going to take the right arm out to the side, let the right knee open out to the side and the left hip drop down a bit. And we might even rotate onto the outer edge of the right foot. And then we're going to exhale back. And we're going to inhale again, right knee out to the right, toes turn out to the right, drop the left hip right down as if you're going to bring your left hip to the floor. And slowly back, and you'll be rotating on that back knee. One more time, inhaling to roll as far in the pelvis as you like. So when we have osteoporosis and we twist, if we bring the pelvis with the twist, it's a little safer. But also I feel that if we let our hips go with us naturally when we twist, it might be safer for all of us. And then when you're ready, bring that hand back to the block or the floor, step the right knee back and take the left foot forward instead. We're going to come up to vertical first, a long lunge. Pull the right knee forward and the left foot back to activate the legs. Or you could press the left foot and the right shin straight down, whatever makes you feel this sense of just activation in the legs. Or you could think of drawing the muscles of the thighs into the bone. Lift up through Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha. Take the arms overhead and arch back. And if you want, you could stay vertical if you don't want to arch back at all. And have this sense of awareness of effort and joy, of work and freedom, or of strength and fluidity, or whatever thoughts come to mind that are seemingly contradictory and yet you are inhabiting at the same time. What does that do to your breath, your face, your desire to move? When you feel ready, you come out. So maybe you want to stay loads longer. Maybe you're ready to come out. Turn the left toes out to the left a little. Right hand is on the floor or on your block. The right toes, just to show you, are angled away from center as far as you like. And the left arm is going to float out to the left. The right hip's going to drop down. The left knee is going to float out to the left. You might even end up on the outside edge of your left foot. And exhale back. Just be very aware of how much you're relying on a block, that you don't rely on it so much that if it falls, you'll be in trouble. Or if you are relying on it heavily, it should be two flat blocks rather than one high wobbly block. So it's less likely to fall. Inhale to turn. Exhale back. Notice what's beautiful about this for you. Inhale to turn. And exhale, bring your two hands to the floor and step back into our last face down dog. 2 face down dogs in total. Crazy. And maybe you look for some yumminess of your own making here. Maybe you don't stay in dog. Maybe you go doing some other fun stuff led by the urgings of your body. Is there anything missing? Is there a posture you want to do, or just a funny random shape? Just play. Respond to your needs. At some point, eventually coming down onto your belly. And when you get there, a little back strengthener, just pubic bone down, navel to the spine, float the legs and the face. Feel the muscles of the back body, but support them with tone in the belly. Maybe floating the arms to go free diving, but really feeling that support from the belly and the pelvic floor. No pinchy pain, but plenty of muscular engagement. And if you're feeling strong, you could waft in and out of this like a bird flying, like inhaling, the limbs rise a little higher, and exhaling, they go lower. But just to make sure that you don't lose the control of the belly, so that you're supporting this movement with core strength as well. When you're cooked, come into a Sphinx pose, so the feet on the floor and the elbows, legs on the floor and the elbows on the floor, under the shoulders, softening the back of the neck a little, softening the shoulders, breathing. And if your heartbeat is increased, just hanging out with it for its journey back to ease. And when you feel a sort of bit of equilibrium appearing, if you have your bolster or cushions, could you take them and put them or it under your rib cage? I know there's one person watching the recording for whom this isn't going to be suitable. You know who you are. And I would say you'd be better off doing a child's pose at this moment, the long spine child's pose. So elbows are over the other side of the bolster if you can. And that doesn't suit everybody, but I'm going to show you this version first, and then I'll show you another one. So the elbows are on the far side, and then you need to get something for your head. I quite like getting 2 blocks. I'm going to flip the other way where there's better light. I'm putting them in an upside down T shape. And then the top block, I slightly angle so that the surface is flat for my forehead. And to those of you, I mean, there's plenty of you who've done this before, and you don't need to watch the next instruction or the next point I'm about to make. But what you want to avoid with the head position is that the head is lower than the upper back. It can be in line with the upper back, that's fine, but try not to let it be lower. I mean, it's not a disaster if it is, except if you've got osteoporosis, then it's a rounded spine. But in terms of the effects of the posture, we're aiming for this to be an extension through the whole spine. And if the head is hanging down, then we're losing some of that extension. If you have larger breasts, you might want to kind of scoop them up over the top of the bolster. And then for some of you, this position will be too high, and you'll need either to bring the bolster further forward and rest your elbows on it like you're just kind of lying on a floor with a cushion under you, like this. If that's a bit claustrophobic, you might need to turn your head a little, but just be careful not to turn it too far because you might strain your neck. And don't forget, you can use something lower than a bolster, like a folded blanket or cushions, as long as there's some little elevation and plenty of peace. So I've been talking a lot. So I'm going to just be silent for about 4 minutes here. And if you need to come out sooner than 4 minutes, simply do. Carefully come out and bring yourself to stillness in some position that feels neutral and comfortable, and notice what you notice. But for now, 3 minutes of silence, noticing your breath and noticing what feels good right now. If your body, your nervous system wants to stay there, of course it can. If the time has come for you to extricate yourself, just very carefully begin to remove props, or maybe just roll the bolster up higher, take that halfway lower position for a moment. Or you might be just as happy to go flat out, resting on one side of your head. If you've osteoporosis, it might be better to rest more towards the nose rather than the ear, so you're not in too deep a turn of the neck. Not a huge issue, just be a teeny bit careful. And see how much you can melt your body into the floor. And then when you're ready, we're going to take ourselves with our legs up the wall. So I highly recommend that you bring a nice blanket for under you and a blanket for over you, unless you're in hotter climates. And bring a low block or a firm cushion with you. Bring blankets, socks, eye pillows. We will be doing a couple of different leg positions, but we will ultimately be staying here. So bring whatever you think you might need close to the wall. But essentially you need a block, and that's all. All the stuff is optional. So remember, to get into the wall, your best route is reversing in sideways so that you can get your bum as close to the wall as possible. Lie down on your side, and then you can roll up and you'll have the block or the wall very close to you. The only reason you need to get your legs close to the wall is that your bum close to the wall is that if your bottom is far away and your legs are on the wall, the angle means that your knees will lock. So if you find you can't get close to the wall, for some people that's very hard, depends on hip flexibility. You can put a bolster behind your bum and make that the wall to stop your knees locking. So it's not like it's absolutely essential to get close, but it can just be a little easier. If it's easy to get there, it's easier. It's an easier place to be. When you get there, take the flattest setting of your block and put it under your pelvis. If you've osteoporosis, just be very careful when you're lifting your bum up to put the block in that you don't throw too much weight up onto your neck and shoulders, to try and minimize the pushing up away from you towards the head when you lift your pelvis to put the block under. And then you tilt your pelvis onto the block, like away from your face. And for the person in the recording gang who is avoiding extensions at the moment, then just do this without the block under your pelvis. And the first thing we're going to do is take the legs wide in dragonfly kind of position. Now, when you spend a long time here with wide legs, they tend to start slipping and falling and may go too far. So if you start to feel a lot of dropping in the legs, maybe put a bolster beside the thigh, like on the wall to the left of the leg, and let the leg rest on it, and maybe a chair to the right leg. You might find that a couple of bricks works okay, a couple of yoga blocks, but they may be a little bit too low. Just depends on you. We don't want too much collapse in those legs. If you want to, you could drape your arms overhead, or that might not feel nice. You might prefer to have them closer to your sides. And don't forget to breathe. We'll stay here for another 5 breaths because this is quite a exposed position for the body. When you're ready, take the legs in. So we'll do a couple of little hellos to the hips before we just stay here with the legs in an easy legs up the wall. So we're going to bend the left knee and take the left foot behind the right knee, the outer edge of the left foot behind the right knee, and the right knee towards, sorry, the outer foot of the right, outer edge of the right foot behind the left knee, and the right knee towards the wall. So let the foot touch the wall, Shobha, the right foot touch the wall, that's it, and the knee opens out, like you're sitting cross-legged with one leg on the wall, one leg out to the side. And then if you can, bring the other foot down behind the knee, so the 2 feet are the outer edges of the feet on the wall, and the knees are pushing out towards the wall. I'm going to just turn my light towards the wall a bit so you can see that a bit better. Give me 1 sec. So basically, it's like we're sitting cross-legged on the wall. The knees are moving towards the wall. And what you are is you're crossed more at the shins than the ankles. And the feet are not down here behind the thighs and towards the bum. They're up more level with the knees. Any of you who've done yin yoga, you'll be accustomed to square pose, I think it's called from my memory, where just the shins are crossed and there's more of a square line between, or a parallel line in this circumstance, between the shins and the ceiling. And thinking your knees towards the wall. Don't want you to push, but you might want to have your hands on your knees so they're not bouncing in. So you don't have to use too much muscular effort to send the knees away, but please don't push with your hands. They can just stop them bouncing back. And breathe. And then just for play, some of you might want to try bringing the right ankle into the left groin, like you're sitting in lotus position, and the left foot can go down behind the right thigh. And bringing the 2 knees towards the wall and breathing. And we'll change the whole thing. Slide the legs out. And then bring the left foot behind the right knee. And then bend the right knee and bring the right foot behind the left knee. So you're again doing that square position with the shins parallel to the ceiling, but this time the left shin is underneath, the right shin is higher up towards the ceiling. You might want to support your knees with your hands and breathe. Again, please don't push. Relax your jaw. And then for play, if you like, bringing the left ankle up into the right hip or groin into a half lotus position and the right foot down behind the left thigh. So it's like you're sitting half cross-legged on the wall. Breathing. And then when you're ready, release your legs up the wall. Get yourself cozy. Maybe you want to wrap a blanket around your thighs. Maybe you want something over your belly. Maybe you want an eye pillow. Maybe you want to leave the thingy under your pelvis, or maybe you want to take the block out and just be flat on the floor. This is going to be your last posture, your shavasana, your chill, in which you can stay for as long as you like. And if it doesn't feel like where you want to be, you could indeed go into shavasana instead. Or any other relaxation pose. You could lie on your belly, you could come into reclining cobbler, whatever your body, nervous system are asking for. And take a moment to notice the sensations in your feet. Quite objectively and curiously notice the sensations in your feet. And notice if there's anything pleasant about those sensations. And notice the sensation of movement created by your natural breath. Watch the movement created by your breath. And is there anything pleasant about that movement? And then become as aware as you possibly can of just the space between your eyebrows. And as if that space between your eyebrows were a movie screen, could you visualize there a place in nature that you love? Maybe it's a made-up place or a real place. Try and really visualize the detail of this place where you might sit and gaze at the beauty. A place where you feel safe and nurtured. Really see it. And is there anything pleasant about taking yourself to this place? And notice how you feel in your muscles, your expression, your nervous system. Cementing your awareness of the value of indulging in simple pleasures. I hope that you'll stay there for as long as you have time to rest in stillness, taking your time when you do eventually leave this moment to exit it gently, moment by moment, piece by piece, before you get on with your day. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May you be well. May you be free from harm. May you progress where possible. May you find ways to sit at ease with the rest. Om Shanti. Peace to you. Namaste about you. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening or day or afternoon wherever you are. And hope to see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.